Honey is a 100% natural food product that bees produce from nectar in flowers. I love everything about it, its smell, texture, taste, how it looks, and that's why I became a beekeeper 3 years ago. My name is Alex, and this is going to be my third honey harvest. On year 1 we had 12 kilograms of honey. On year 2 we had a much better harvest of 68 kilograms, and soon we're going to find out how much we got this year. It's currently the 1st of August, and over the past month the bees have been storing away loads of honey in the top boxes of the hives. My plan is to harvest it soon, but I'm just checking to see whether it's ripe. When I say ripe, I mean it being at the correct moisture content. Below 20% water content is the aim, as at this level the honey won't ferment and spoil. In fact, it'll pretty much last forever. As you can see here, some of the frames have a white layer of wax over the top. The bees seal the honey over with this wax when it's at the right moisture level. So when you see this white capping over the top, you know it's ready to harvest. If the frame isn't capped over with wax, you can shake the frame upside down a few times. If the honey doesn't spray out, it's also a sign that it's ready. One box in particular was looking really good and felt pretty heavy, meaning it was full of honey. A few days later, I returned to put escape boards on the hives. Basically, it's a one-way system that gets bees out of the honey boxes and makes it easier to take the honey off the hives.
This is the escape board we're going to use. I've got this device, which bees can go through one way and not get back through the other. That goes in this hole. And then the other hole has got a different type of one-way system. Apparently these are much better. So we're gonna use both of them.
Two days later, I returned again to take the honey. However, when I checked in one of the boxes, I was pretty devastated to find that all the honey was gone. In total, I estimated about 30 kilograms of honey to disappear in a couple of days. How on earth did that happen? Well, it's all down to a couple of small gaps in the hive roof that I didn't know about. Bees from other colonies somehow found the honey, and because the boxes were empty of bees due to using the bee escape boards, there were no guard bees to protect the honey, and so it was easily robbed. Over a month's worth of nectar my bees had collected had gone in a matter of days. Luckily, not all my hive roofs had holes in, and I did still manage to take a number of boxes of honey off the hives. With the help of a mini battery-powered blower, I could blow any remaining bees off the frames before putting them in my van. You have to be pretty quick with this, otherwise the frame of honey quickly becomes covered with bees again. At this time of year, bees and wasps find honey so quickly.
So I put the honey boxes in the van, and there was obviously quite a lot of bees still in there. Let them all free! That would have been a nightmare car drive. Absolute nightmare. This is not going to be the most enjoyable journey home. Just as long as you don't sting me. They shouldn't, because they should be full of honey. Back in the kitchen with all the honey boxes. The drive home was pretty hectic. I had bees all over the car, flying around me. I tried my best to stay calm. We've got more boxes to extract than last year, but they're just not full. So I think there's going to be actually a lot less honey than last year. So I've got the kitchen set up in a way which I think should make the whole extracting process pretty smooth. All the full boxes of honey are there. I say full, and this is the average frame. Not looking that great. There's honey in all of this section here, which is slightly darker, but not much of it is capped over, and it's not like full to the brim. Anyway, once the frame is taken out of the box, we put it over here, cut the wax cappings off on both sides. Now this is a pretty neat little box thing which I made recently. You can buy these for like 150 quid. So I thought I'd try and make one for about 25, 30 pounds. 2 buckets. First bucket I've put a hole in and just cut down like a drying cake rack thing. And then in there, it's just a normal bucket with a honey gate. And that's basically because here is where you cut the wax off the frames. The wax will sit on top and it will do like a minor filter. It won't filter it as much as it will down there, because that's the filter for when we can then bottle it and jar it. But this will just filter out all the big bits of wax, so then the honey drops through into the bottom, and then I can pour the honey in the bottom bucket into that filter. Then I can fill my 3-frame manual extractor up. I'll then spin the honey out. It will go through this honey gate at the bottom, through a sieve. It will filter out all the wax. Then the honey will drip into the bucket, and then I can close that bucket up and then bottle, jar up the honey at a later date. Right, let's get to work. First frame uncapped.
Once you've put 3 frames in the extractor, you can start the first spin. But once all the honey is spun out from one side, you have to turn the frame around and then spin again.
And that frame doesn't weigh anything anymore. It's such an incredible machine. Well, we've got at least a jar of honey, I can see that much. This is what it's meant to look like. Hopefully we're going to see more and more frames like this.
Every frame of honey is slightly different. Frames which have a large wax layer are easily cut off with a serrated knife, and the bits which the knife doesn't cut off are finished with an uncapping fork. Some frames don't have any wax cappings on at all. These are really easy, you just pop them in the extractor and away you go.
Yeah, these are the best frames I managed to get. They're pretty much full and capped over. Still not like last year's. My one box that I did have, which was totally full, got all eaten, so I'm pretty sad about that. But these are the second best frames. Not bad. More honey. As you can see at the bottom, there's a puddle of honey, and I can't spin any more out until I have emptied it into the bucket. So here goes. Well, hey. Now that lot to go. This is really delicious. It's mild, it's not strong flavoured honey. It's just so, it's like caramel. In my personal opinion, probably a little bit biased, but the honey you get from like the summer English honey is so, the flavours are so even. They're not like super strong, they're not super sour, they're just so nicely rounded. I think it's probably because the bees collect the nectar from a wide variety of flowers, and when you combine them all it sort of levels out and is quite neutral. I tried some ivy honey the other day, which was super interesting flavours, almost tasted like medicine. And then you've got horse chestnut honey, which has a interesting flavour, but this is just so nicely rounded, and it's definitely my favourite type of honey that I've tried, which is good because it's the stuff which my bees go out and make in the summer. This is a refractometer, and I can see the moisture content of the honey using this. It needs to be below 20%. 19%. If it's higher than 20%, there's a chance that it can ferment, and you can't legally sell it as honey, I don't think. This honey is good. I can sell it, I can eat it. It will last probably forever. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how much weight of honey we got. 23 kilos of honey. Could have been more like 50, I reckon, if I hadn't messed up big time. But seeing as at times of this year I thought I wasn't going to get any honey harvest, 23 kilos is actually a nice surprise. I've got to remember that my expectations were at first a lot lower than that. It was only when I saw all the honey on the hive like a few days ago that I knew there was more than that. So not all bad, not all good. Learnt some lessons. There's a couple of jobs to do now, filling all the jars of honey and then rendering down the wax and making candles. I got my bucket of honey, 23 kilograms, actually maybe a little bit less because of the weight of the bucket. I then got a weighing scale because I need to fill the jars at least 227 grams, which is 8 ounces. It can't be less than that. It can be a bit more, that doesn't matter. You're giving the consumer a little bit more than they paid for, but it just can't be less. These jars have been cleaned and then I put them in the oven, which sterilised them and also dried them out. It's quite hard to dry a jar like this. You don't want to put a hand towel inside and wipe it because then the hand towel can leave stuff on the inside of the jar. It's basically a simple case of taking a jar, putting it under the honey gate, filling it up, testing it on the weighing scale, putting the lid on and then putting it to the side. There is one I did earlier. Nothing better than seeing the final jar of honey. That is just straight from the beehives, made by the bees over the past month or two. If my estimates are correct, we should be able to fill up about 100 jars.
Once the jars of honey were filled, it was time to deal with the wax. I needed to filter and clean this dirty wax so it could be used in candles. The first phase involved adding some water to a large pot and putting the wax on top. The water keeps the wax from getting too hot and burning. This was then put over a flame and boiled until all the wax had melted. As it melted, I could fit more and more wax into the pot. I used a sieve to scoop out all the dirt before turning off the heat and letting it cool down.
There's loads of bees that have found some dropped honey, and in here it looks a whole lot different.
From the first round of cleaning, we've got this block of beeswax. From all that raw wax, you just expect to get way more than this. I gave the saucepan a little rinse and clean, added some more water. We're going to place this back in. Basically, there always needs to be water in there, otherwise the wax can burn. Once it had melted again, I poured it through some cheesecloth to filter out all the tiny pieces of dirt. I found that pillow covers also work for this, as well as socks or shirts. Basically anything with a fine mesh will work.
So after giving away quite a lot of my jars of honey to friends and family, I have about 80 jars that I can sell. Now what I want to do is sell every jar of honey with a candle as well. My bees produced this year maybe 25 kilograms of honey, and for that amount of honey, this is the total amount of wax. After melting it down, as you can see, there's not much. Probably 900 grams, I would have thought. It's so beautiful though. This stuff has been filtered down and all I need to do is melt this and then I can turn it into candles. But if I want to sell every jar of honey with some candles, that's not enough wax. So I managed to buy in a load more wax. And if you want to make candles, you can. You can buy wax from beekeepers all across the UK. I got this stuff from Gwyn and Griffith in Wales. There's one piece. So this stuff we're going to melt down with my own beeswax. And I actually have some wax left over from last year as well, which we're going to melt down. And then we're going to do some candle dipping. What is candle dipping? It's as simple as it sounds. You take a bit of cotton wick, you dunk this into some molten wax, let it solidify, and then do it again. a load of times until the wax has thickened around each wick, and then you'll have 2 candles. You cut it at the top and then it separates the 2 different candles. I did this last year on a very small scale and I produced some nice candles. This year I've got to make obviously 80 pairs of candles. So I bought this little device. It's basically a hook at the top to hang it, to let it dry, and then a load of little hooks which I have threaded cotton wick around. So I can do 1, 2, 3, I can do 4 candles at a time. I dunk this into my pot of wax, lift it out, let it rest on my wooden rig that I made, and then take it off, dunk it again, put it back, and basically just repeat that until the candles are about 1 inch thick. I'll show you the whole process in the kitchen in a second. I've decided to do it in my bedroom rather than in the kitchen, just because I'm pretty sure it will cause some mess and I don't want my housemates to have to deal with that mess. This is the same boiler that I use for making beer, and then we can put this container inside the water, and that means that the wax which is inside here will heat up slowly, because you can't let wax get too hot. So that goes in here. The boiler's been going about half an hour, and as the wax in there is melting, I've been pushing it down and then loading more wax on top. Once that is full and all of it is melted through, I can then start the dipping process. Yeah, I would recommend doing this in a kitchen. All my windows are steamed up. It's really foggy in here. It's day 2 of candle making. Yesterday I realised how long it takes to heat up and melt the wax in that thick metal tube. Basically, I heated it up, melted all the wax. By the time it had melted, I had some other stuff I had to do, so I had to leave the house and go out. So I turned off the heating element and I got back and it had all solidified again. So I realised I basically need a whole day to do candle making. So I have time to heat it up to the right temperature and dip the candles. So the boiler's on, the wax is slowly melting, and hopefully today we're actually going to do some candle dipping. I realised I needed to move everything into the kitchen where there was better ventilation, as my bedroom now felt like a sauna. In the kitchen, I also had space to set up my smaller candle dipping rig too. So this is the slightly smaller scale setup we've got. It's exactly the same principle though. We've got a container heating up water, and then the water is heating up the wax. And then here I've got a slightly different drying setup. Got these pieces of wood, the wicks will lay across those, and then I'll give it a dunk and then leave it on here to cool down and solidify. I've got 3 of these pieces of wood, so I can interchange 3 at a time, so I can basically be making 6 candles at a time. Now that was way quicker. Look how quick that's melted. I've rigged up the strings with little weights to give it some tension, and soon we'll be able to get dipping.
Once everything was set up and running smoothly, it turned out to be quite a therapeutic way to spend the day. I could listen to my favourite music, dip candles and relax.
And I basically just keep dipping and drying and dipping and drying until the candles are, I'm gonna try and make them about 1 inch wide. I think that's a nice width for the candles to be. So 2.5 centimeters. And there we go. It took me an hour or more to get these candles dipped. I can't remember how many actual dips I had to do. But we've got these candles which are just under 1 inch in diameter. And they're the first dipped candles of the year. Wax is just the coolest material in the world. So these will be going inside boxes with the honey. It looks like I can't make these candles any wider, because otherwise they would be touching each other. The wax is still pretty soft, it cut through. Look at that.
Once all the candles were cut off and hanging to dry, I rigged it up again and repeated the process.
It's 5 o'clock now, so my housemates are probably going to start coming back from work, so I'm going to finish up the current batch of candles and then resume maybe tomorrow or another day. Good day though.
As well as the dipped candles, I also made some in a few spare honey jars and also silicone moulds. This ended up being a much less time-consuming way of making candles, as all I had to do was pour the molten wax into the mould and then wait. I could get on with other things, whereas the candle dipping, you have to constantly be there dipping the candles. Beeswax for me is definitely the most interesting material to work with. It can be moulded into pretty much any shape you like, and the way that you can turn it from a solid to a liquid and back to solid again means that you can never really make mistakes. You can always reverse your wax back into a liquid and then form it into whatever shape you like. It was now time to start assembling the finished product. I wanted to create a little gift box, which included a jar of honey and a pair of candles. Some legal requirements included putting a best before date on the base of every jar, and also a little swing tag label. Just like last year, a couple of friends kindly helped me with the label. This is definitely my weak point. I'm not much of a artistic person, but luckily I have a friend who's really good at this sort of thing. Last year she painted a beautiful blackberry flower for the label, and this year a clover. Clover is what I believe the bees to have foraged most of the honey from. There were loads of these flowers around the beehives.
I got some free smiley stickers. Every set of candles and honey will go inside a nice little box. And when you buy packaging boxes, you get them as nets. You might remember learning about nets in maths lessons at school. Basically, this turns into a box like this. So now I've got to make up a load of boxes that I can then package everything into. That's the first one done. That's all the boxes. I'm so nearly there with getting the honey and candles ready to sell. I have just taken some pictures on my camera and I'm just going to process the photos of the products. Reminds me of my old job where I used to make product videos and take product pictures. They're not the most professional product pictures. I don't really have a proper studio to shoot in, so I've been doing some in the kitchen, some just on the floor in the living room, some in my bedroom. And now that the pictures are done, I'm going to put a post on Instagram, basically putting the products up for sale. It's all coming together. Okay, so we've got all the boxes. These are empty currently. And then I've got all the jars of honey. I still need to put labels on the jar of honey, and I'm going to do this by tying a bit of raffia string onto the top of the jar. I've got a shoebox full of dipped candles. I've got a load more in my bedroom as well, once I run out. And we're going to make up a load of these boxes. But what I'm going to do is, while I'm receiving messages on my phone, because my phone is going nuts, I'm getting so many messages of people wanting honey, if they are asking for something extra, like they want an extra jar of honey or an extra pair of candles, I will be able to make that up as I go along. I think in about 5 minutes I have already sold out of all my stuff. Okay, so well, 10 hours later, and I've made quite a mess with all the straw packaging. But I've got about 50 boxes over there ready to send out. All the honey sold out pretty quick. I've still got a few candles which I'm going to try and sell, and I'm also going to try and make some more of these mould ones. I might even buy some other molds and use the rest of my wax, making some other interesting shaped candles. But yeah, that was a long day. It was quite repetitive, but also really nice getting loads of messages from people who have seen my videos over the years and wanted to get their hands on some of the honey. It's a good feeling finally having the product ready to sell after a whole year of beekeeping. My job on Saturday will be annoying the post office with all my parcels. I'm gonna bring all my parcels to them and get them sent out across the UK.
Looking back over the past year, I'm quite proud of myself actually. At the end of 2023, I moved house with my bees to a new part of England. I managed to expand my apiary over the year from 2 hives up to 9, and I even managed a small honey harvest, which is now being consumed by people across the UK. As another season of beekeeping comes to a close, I'm already preparing for next year, where my aim will be to produce a much larger honey harvest. Fingers crossed the bees stay safe and survive the winter. In the meantime, I think I'm gonna go on vacation somewhere in the mountains this winter and do some skiing. See you soon.